Hello, everyone. Thank you for your patience and welcome to the fiscal year 2025 Annual Grant Professional Artist Fellowship Technical Assistance Workshop. Today we have Lisa DeSmit, Director of Programs, presenting along with Jude DeLuna, a Programs Associate. Also on the team, but not present, is Sergio Alan Diaz. We'll wait a moment or two for others to get connected. Okay, we will go ahead and get started now. We want to first recognize that we work on the unceded traditional and sacred lands of the Tongva, Quiche, Akshaman, and Chumash, and the many other Indigenous groups who call these grounds home. We honor and extend our gratitude to all of the original people still living in this region. Before we get started, please rename your video panel with your first name or organization or your social media handle. If you feel comfortable, you can turn on your video. It helps create a good environment and helps you put a face to the name. It's okay if it's your art, put your art to the name. If you could please be sure that you place yourself on mute when you are not speaking. This helps minimize background noise and distractions. Feel free to use the chat to communicate with meeting hosts if you need assistance. And use the reaction buttons if you'd like. They are located at the bottom panel of the screen, a little smiley face. You can also find captions. If you move down further towards the right, you'll see 3 dots that say more. You can click on that and you'll see captions. Feel free to turn on the captions if you would like. At the Arts Council for Long Beach, our mission is to cultivate the physical, social, and economic characteristics of Long Beach neighborhoods by nurturing and enlivening the arts. Our vision at the Arts Council for Long Beach envisions a thriving Long Beach that benefits from universal participation in the arts. We serve individuals, groups, and organizations through advocacy, arts education, public art, and grant making within the city of Long Beach. We practice profound inclusion as a collaborator and convener for the benefit of all communities. And now I will pass it on to Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining the Arts Council for Long Beach's Technical Assistance Workshop for the Professional Artist Fellow. I want to go over the agenda really quickly and what we're going to be covering. Today, we're going to do a very quick overview of our grant programs, which are Community Project, Operating, and Professional Artist Fellows. Then we're going to talk about how funds are dispersed and dive deep into the Professional Artist Fellowship, talking about eligibility, evaluation criteria, application steps, artistic documentation, and at the end, we will be opening it up for questions and answers. Feel free as we're going through the presentation, if you have questions, you can type them into the chat and we will get to them at the end. And then also at the end, we'll open it up and be able to have a discussion with questions after the presentation. So what are the Arts Council for Long Beach's grant programs? So we have annual grants and we also have quarterly grants. Within our annual grants program, today you're all here for the Professional Artist Fellowship, Community Projects Grant, which is for nonprofits in Long Beach with or without a 501c3 or applying with a fiscal sponsor who do programming here in Long Beach, arts programming specifically, and therefore arts and cultural organizations. And those are for specific projects during the grant period. So those folks are going to be applying for a specific project-based grant. The operating grant one is for larger organizations that have a budget of $250,000 or above. And these are for arts organizations. These are nonprofits. You are not allowed to apply with a fiscal sponsor. It must be their own nonprofit. And operating two has the same requirements, but it's also for larger organizations with budgets of $1 million and above. So these are our larger grant opportunities. You can find more about these grant programs at on our website. Jude put a link to that as well in the chat. And then in addition, we have quarterly microgrants, and we have two different types. One's the project microgrant, which is for grants that are free and open to the public and providing arts programming in Long Beach, and professional development microgrants, which are for arts professionals who'd like to get some more professional development opportunities, whether it be going to a workshop, attending a conference. Sometimes we've given professional development for folks that are doing an artist residency. And so the Arts Council funds up to 50% of just the fees for the workshop or professional development opportunity. Does not fund travel expenses or anything like that. And that's typically around the range of $500 max, depending on the conference fees. And microgrants are up to $1,000 per fiscal year. You can find out more about that as well on our microgrants page, and Jude will put the link to that in the chat. So now let's talk a little bit more about the Professional Artist Fellowship. What is the Professional Artist Fellowship? So we are honoring Long Beach's living artists, and this is awarding folks that are showcasing their most recent work. To be eligible, you must be an active artist in Long Beach. So you want to make sure that you're actively working, demonstrating that you're here in Long Beach, you have an active exhibition and production record of at least 3 years, and you want to have a profound impact on the Long Beach community. So we're going to dive in a little bit more about what that means, what eligibility is, and a little bit more detail through this presentation. So the awards are based on merit. So the panelists will score based on the rubric that we're going to present. It's based on artistic merit and professional achievement. And the amounts vary depending on the number of applicants, how many qualified applicants we receive, and how much funding we get. Oftentimes we will supplement the City of Long Beach funding, and we're able to fund either more artists or fund artists at an additional amount as well. Typically, the range has been about $4,000 to $5,000 on average for the Professional Artist Fellowship. So what are the eligibility requirements? What do you need to produce in order to be eligible for this? So we really want to make sure that this grant is going to Long Beach artists who are active in Long Beach, either by living in Long Beach, working here, or actively creating in Long Beach. We also want artists that are demonstrating that they're active in exhibitions or production within the last 3 years and have been doing things in Long Beach. That's very important. So the awards are, again, based on artistic merit and professional achievement. The funds available, as I said before. So what are the criteria? So for documentation, we want to make sure that you have a physical presence in Long Beach. So that could be through a business license, home or studio, proof of residence, or consistent pay stubs. We're looking to be able to show that you're either living, working, or actively creating in Long Beach. So if you have any questions about, what that might look like or what would make you eligible, feel free to reach out to us and we can clarify. And also artists must be receiving payment and or serious critical recognition for their artistic achievements, either through artistic services or products. So how are we going to determine who gets funded? Everybody's going to apply. Hopefully that's here today. And once we receive all the applications, Arts Council staff, grant staff that you see here are going to review all of the applications. We're going to make sure everything is included, nothing's missing. We're going to check for eligibility, those requirements that we stated before. And then we're going to prepare everything for a grant panel. These will be regional professionals that are not Arts Council staff. And we'll be 1 board member and 4 regional professionals that are on the panel. And so they will review all the applications, score them based on the scoring rubric that we're going to show you a little bit later in this presentation. And then the awards will be granted based on the average scores between all 5 of the panelists, determined on the amount of funds that we have and the number of qualified applicants. Those funding recommendations will be reviewed by the Arts Council Board of Directors and Allocations Committee before funding is ratified. So the committee and the Arts Council Board of Directors will review everything and must approve those recommendations before we can move forward. The applicants are notified after we receive our contract from the City of Long Beach. So the city doesn't actually pass its budget until usually September. Award notifications for us can't happen until we receive our contract, which is usually after that time, usually sometime between November and February. So it is a little bit of a long waiting period. If you're applying in June, you may be waiting a little bit to hear back about the award. So keep that in mind. So who is not eligible for this? So if you're a full-time student, we do make some exceptions. So if you're a post-grad student, or if you have a serious recognition or professional experience, we definitely want to make sure that you're meeting those eligibility requirements. But if you're a full-time student just getting started, this is not, that would be more of an emerging grant, and this is for a professional artist fellowship. Any artist that's received a professional artist fellowship within the last 3 annual grant cycles. So we want to make sure that new, fresh artists are being funded, and it's not the same artist every time. So we do make artists wait to apply for 3 grant cycles. As I showed those other grant opportunities before, you can only apply to 1 grant opportunity. So if you're a professional artist, and let's say you might have a company that you work with as well, like a theater company or something like that, and they're applying for the community project grant, you wouldn't be able to apply to both. It would be one or the other. So you need to think carefully about which grant category you fit into to make sure you're applying for the correct grant category, because you can only apply for one. We will be having a workshop on the community project grant next Wednesday. So if you'd like to join that, get more information, and then determine which grant you'd like to apply for, we welcome you to do that as well. So what artistic disciplines are eligible? We want to be as inclusive as possible with the definition of arts and creatives. And so we're really excited to announce that we've expanded these artistic disciplines. This is not an exhaustive list. We are open to all types of art. And so please, if you feel like you don't fit into one of these categories, reach out to us and we can let you know if it is a fit. But visual, performing arts, costume design is new. We've added that one because we want to make sure we're including that. We do have one fellow this year that actually is a recipient of and is a costume designer. Audio arts, literary arts, media arts, also new. This is exciting. We're adding culinary arts to the list of disciplines that are eligible. And multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary arts and folk and traditional arts. So these are the categories. Again, we want to make sure that we are as inclusive as possible. So if there's something that we missed, please reach out to us and we can determine if you're eligible to apply. What are we looking for in the application? How is this going to be evaluated? As I said before, we have the grant panel that's going to be reviewing and scoring the applications. So there's a total of 30 points per application. And it's split up into 2 categories: artistic achievement, which is 15 points, and artistic background, which is also 15 points. We're looking for the artist's work reflects a high level of artistry or craftsmanship. Artist statement, resume, and artistic samples relate to one another. The artist statement engages the reader. It explains the goals, motivations of the artwork, and is clear and well written. So I want you all to pin that. Jude's going to put these evaluation criteria in the chat for us. I'm going to point back to this when we dive a little bit deeper into the statement, resume, and samples, and talk again about what we're looking for and how you can tailor those to what we're looking for in the evaluation criteria. And then again, the second part is the artist background. So we're looking for formal artistic training or apprenticeship, practice in the discipline, several years of productivity and achievement in professional venues. And this is very important, contribution to the local community. We are looking for Long Beach artists who are working here in Long Beach with the community. And so how are you contributing to the local community? How are you going to highlight that? We're looking for workshops, exhibiting locally. There's lots of ways to engage in Long Beach. We have a venue shortage here, so it may not be exhibitions or performances. It may be other ways that you're engaging in Long Beach through workshops or various other ways. So the total is 30 points. And these are what we're looking for. And this is what the panel will be scoring on. And again, I want to reiterate that it's regional professionals that we're going to be bringing onto the panel. The panel is different every year. And this is a very important point because we've had artists who one year didn't get the fellowship. Next year, it's a very different panel. And maybe they've tightened up a few things and they get it. So I don't want anybody to get discouraged. It changes every year who the panel is. And we really try and get a balanced panel of various backgrounds so that we have folks from all different areas of the region and also different artistic backgrounds. So it's a balanced panel. What are you going to need for this application? What do you need to have prepared? So again, we talked about that proof of residency or presence in Long Beach. So you're going to need to have some sort of documentation of that. You'll need to have your artist statement, and we'll dive a little bit more into what that looks like and what we're looking for. We do ask for an arts equity and cultural inclusion statement. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well and what we're looking for and what that question is in the application. We need either a resume or CV that shows your work or your list of achievements. We're looking for letters of recommendation. We need 2 letters from professionals in your practice. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then finally, artistic documentation. And this is really, really important, the artistic documentation. What are we looking for to show that you are an artist that lives, works, or actively creates in Long Beach? If you have a driver's license that shows your address, great, that's easy. Any kind of government issued ID, a utility bill within the last 90 days of the application deadline. If you have a business license, rental agreement, if you have a studio here, if you're working in Long Beach, if you can show pay stubs or payment for work, something like that. And then any alternate form of proof of living, working, or actively creating in Long Beach. So let's dive into the artistic statement. This is where I want to go back to, we talked about the evaluation criteria, and we talked about the point of artistic statement, resume, and artistic documentation all relate to one another. So your statement is going to be very important. Not only is the artistic documentation important, but your statement is really going to be one very important component into this application. So a lot of artists are maybe visual artists, or I know we have some amazing writers as well, but not everybody's gifted with that skill. So writing about your work, if you're, say, a visual artist or you've never written about your work before, that can be really tough. And so I get asked a lot, why do we need an artist statement? What's the reason that we need to even do this? It's really important for you within your practice to have a statement. It helps you as well. It's kind of a document that serves as focusing your ideas, talking about your practice, talking about your methods, and it helps you be an entry point for the viewer or for the panel so that they can understand your work. It also helps you to clarify ideas. It helps you to have a resource if you want to apply for other grants or if you want to apply for other opportunities. So your artist statement is really integral, not only to the application, but to your professional artistic practice. And I share this link to GIST. They have a lot of resources on artist statements and samples of what that can look like for all different types of artistic genres. So they have a sample for each type. And so I love to share this resource. It's free on their website. You can get samples. There's lots of information on there. What do you want to have in your artistic statement? You want to talk about your practice as an artist, your philosophy. You want to talk about the creative process or highlight any major lines of inquiry or artistic inquiry. You want to talk about your goals, short and long term, talk about activities, what you're doing, anything that you want to highlight in terms of publication and community activities. Again, when we talk about community activities, I want to emphasize it's really important that you're showing that you're active in Long Beach. How will you grow as an artist through the fellowship? If you want to share, this is not a project-based fellowship. You're not proposing a project, but we are looking for, this is a year-long dedicated time for you to focus on your artistic practice. So we want to know how you're going to grow, how this fellowship will help you. We do have an option for folk and traditional artists to add a narrative that discusses their traditional practice. So there'll be space for that. So if folk and traditional artists want to talk about their projects or how they expand traditional ideas from their art form, you want to talk about the target audience and community. You want to talk about your envisioned impact on that target audience in the near future. And then do you have any existing relationship with this audience or community, and describe how you plan to reach that suggested community. So this is really important when we're talking about presence in Long Beach, what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be reaching the community. Being very community-based is important for the Arts Council for Long Beach, for the city of Long Beach. And so we want to fund artists that are really working with community. A CV or resume, you want to include that. You want to talk about major works, exhibition, productions, commissions, collaboration with dates. This area is going to be really important. This is where you're going to demonstrate your history of working in Long Beach, your history of working in the community. So thinking about that when you're putting your resume together, not only do you want to demonstrate your achievements, but also demonstrating how you've been active in Long Beach can be really important to the grant application. Also education, do you have any degrees, apprenticeships, self-taught history with corresponding dates? Related employment, and I want to emphasize related. If it's not related to your artistic practice, please leave that out. It's not going to be relevant to the application and it's going to confuse panelists. Any fellowships, prizes, grants, or honors that you've received, or residency with corresponding dates. We put a resource on the slide. Just does have some resources on resumes and CVs for all different genres of artists as well. Another area that's important is your letters of recommendation. These are due at the application deadline. So that would be the first thing I would do right now is seek out those letters of recommendation. You're asking from professionals, they're busy, this can take time. We don't want this to impede your application. So I would today reach out to those folks who you'd like to write a letter to have for you for the application so you can get that as soon as possible and not have that hold you up. So we want 2 letters, and they should indicate how these folks are supporting. It says proposed project, but it's not a project. How these folks are supporting you and your artistic practice, how they've come to know your work, and any professional affiliations. The letters should be addressed to members of the panel. Letters should be on professional letterhead, and they must be included in the application. We can't get them after the application. And I want to just talk a little bit about letters of recommendation and what we've seen in the past that has been a successful letter and what has not. I'm going to use myself as an example. I've applied for grants before as an artist, and a particular grant, I did not receive the grant. And I did submit a letter of recommendation that was from an employer. And the feedback that I got from the grant panel was that this is not a letter that's talking about your artistic practice. This is talking about you as an employee and giving a reference that way. So we're really looking for these letters to be able to speak to your artistic practice, highlight and uplift that. And I think it's important, as difficult as it is, to get these letters from professionals, the more professional letters that you can get, the better. Not just, this is my friend recommending me, but somebody who's actually experienced in the field and has interacted with you and has knowledge of your work as an artist. Artistic documentation is really, really important part of this application. Probably, I would say, the most important part of the application. Panelists are visual. They want to hear what your work is. This is where the rubber meets the road in terms of the application. So really focus on think about what you're submitting, think about the best samples to include. And again, going back to our criteria for evaluation, does everything relate to each other? Does your statement relate to what you're submitting as your artistic documentation? Does your statement talk about your work as a musician, but you're submitting visual art samples? That's going to really confuse the panel and wonder, why does the statement say this, but the artwork doesn't relate to it at all? So making sure that all of that relates. I suggest having a third party or a friend or somebody who has no idea about your work look at everything and ask them those type of questions. What do you get from this? Does this all relate to each other? Is it making sense? It's really helpful to get somebody else to take a look at it. Sometimes when we're in our own head, we don't see what we don't see. So having a friend or colleague take a look at your work before you submit it. So we ask for samples of high production and quality within your work so that it's clear or to be seen or heard, depending on the type of sample. It should demonstrate your skill in the art form. So you really want to be putting your best work forward. We don't want unfinished work. So we want to make sure that it's finished works that are completed within the last 3 years. So we want fresh work, not something that you did in 2020, or sorry, 2000. work sample description. So we asked also for a description of these samples. So this is going to be something that you upload. We are going to put together a little video as a supplement to this workshop that'll really dive deep into some samples of what that artistic documentation looks like, what the index looks like. So look out for that. If you registered for this workshop, we'll be sending that out through email to everybody that registered. So we'll send out a little video and dive a little bit more deeply into artistic documentation for everybody. So we want to make sure that you're able to describe what the work is so that the panel understands what is this image, what is this audio sample that I'm looking at, so they can understand. We want to know the date, title, venue, length of work, dimensions, and media, if it was done in collaboration and what your role was. We want to understand the relevance to the project or to your work itself. And then we also want to know a little bit more specifics about what type of documentation to include. So we want to use this file naming format just so that it's all consistent. So last name, first name, and then artistic documentation. And then we want one PDF that has embedded hyperlinks if you have video or audio files. And we also want to make sure that these links we're able to access them. So we've had times when there's been a password protection on the link and it's prohibited the panel from accessing those links, or it's been a link that's been broken. So we want to really make sure you test out those hyperlinks and make sure that they're working before you submit the application. We don't want originals of your work. It's all going to be in PDF. So please don't mail us your paintings or whatever work that you're doing. And then for audio samples, where they should be, what number sample you want us to listen to, and the order should be reflected in the artistic documentation. So when you submit that supplemental documentation, you're going to say, please listen in this order. And then again, always test everything before submitting. So for the instructions, for video, again, embedded hyperlink with any samples. So if you have a YouTube or Vimeo or anything like that, you can link to that. Up to 5 minutes. The panel is reviewing a lot of applications. They don't have time to watch a 1-hour video. If you do have a longer one, you'll be able to indicate where to start. So start at 400 and play 2 minutes. That's an example of how you would indicate on the work sample sheet how you want this viewed. So no panelists will be spending no more than 5 minutes on each sample. So please keep that in mind to really highlight what part of the video or audio that you would like them to listen to. And these are encouraged for music. And then also numbering the files so that they're in order of which way we want them played. So those are very important. And again, we're going to send some instructions more detailed with a little video and some samples of what that might look like for various art forms. For visual artists, it's up to 10 images. And they should be submitted as a slide deck. So what we recommend is if you have PowerPoint, or even you can use Google Docs, and you can do an image and then type out the information on it. So it's 10 slides. So you can use Google Slides, you can use a Google Doc, PowerPoint. At the end, the format we needed it is as a PDF. And then this is very important, and that's the file size. So 52 DPI and 5 megabytes or smaller. If it's larger than that, it's not going to upload into you're going to have difficulty with submitting it. And so we will share some different resources for how to resize files. That'll also be in the short video that we're going to send out. That'll show how you can resize it easily without having to purchase any special software. And then for publications, if you're a literary artist, samples should be saved as a PDF as well, and it should all be contained in that same documentation. We will be providing some one-on-ones with a professional photographer and a professional writer to have some assistance with headshots, photos of your artwork. And those will be one-on-one appointments to be booked. So keep an eye out. Make sure you're following us on social media, because we will soon be announcing those, and time slots will be limited. So if you'd like to get some one-on-one assistance and have a professional look over your statement and your resume, we're going to be providing one-on-one appointments for that and photography appointments. So you can get shots of your work, headshots, all of that. So definitely make sure you're following us on social media so you can sign up right away, and our newsletter as well when those opportunities open up. So what's the timeline? The application is open right now. The deadline is Friday, June 14th at 5 p.m. We want to make sure that it's 5 p.m., not midnight, not 5:01, 5 p.m. Pacific time. And the reason in the past we've done midnight, I want to make sure everybody knows the reason we're doing it at 5 p.m. because we want to be able to assist you if you're struggling on that day and there's technical issues happening with the application. We want to be able to assist you, and we won't be able to do that until midnight. So that's why we're doing the deadline at 5 p.m. If something is happening, please email us. The grants team will be working and trying to help assist anybody that's having technical issues. So how to apply? The application is up on our website. Jude's going to put a link to that specific application. It's up, it's live now. Email us if you have any trouble with it, but everything is working. We've received a few applications already. And then if you have any additional questions, you're going to want to email grants@artslb.org, and we will respond as quickly as possible to you. But also keep in mind that if you do need assistance, we recommend not waiting until the last day. There's only a few of us to help out. So if everybody's emailing us at the last hour, we're not going to be able to be efficient with helping out. So please, at least a week before to 2 weeks before the grant deadline. And this is our grants team. We're here to help. Contact us, send us an email. The grants email is the best email to get responses to questions about the grant application, and we're here to help. We also have a direct phone number that's for the grants line. You feel free to call that as well. And so that concludes our presentation. And we'd like to open it up now to questions. I believe we did get a few questions in the chat. I'm just going to check in on that. And then if anybody wants to raise their hand, we can also ask questions. So I see a question about, what about long-term projects? I have been photographing the same circus family for 15 years, over 100 photo shoots and tens of thousands of images. There's no problem with a long-term project. I think as long as it's not something that you're not continuing to do right now, but it sounds like even though the project has been going on for 15 years, it's still been active within the last 3 years. So that's no problem at all. Let's see. And then I see a question about including microgrants. I'm not sure what that means, but maybe if you want to raise your hand, we can clarify what that means. I think it's all the questions in the chat. So I'm going to go with who's up on my screen first. Megan, I see that you have a question.
Hi, yes. So for the samples, mine is in performing arts, and I have a solo show that's, it's 70 minutes long. Can my samples be different sections of that solo show, or does it have to be different performances of a totally different material?
That's a great question. So you can include that whole sample, but then just indicate start at this time and then when to end. So it'll be 5 minutes within that whole. So you can still submit the whole thing, but just you're going to need to indicate where you want the panel to watch. Some may watch the whole thing. We're only asking them to dedicate 5 minutes per artistic sample, but we get panelists that want to watch the whole thing, so that may happen. But
well, and forgive me if this was covered. How many samples are needed for the application?
It depends on how you're submitting. 1 second. Sorry, I don't have it up right now, but let me answer that question in the chat. Star, I see you have a question.
Oh, you had said that you're only able to apply for one grant, but it does seem that some of the grants are very different. and they have different time periods. So if somebody applied for a micro grant and they applied for this grant, they wouldn't be able to apply for both, which I'm just wondering about that, because it would seem to make more sense to be able to apply for both. And if someone gets the micro grant, they could either decline the micro grant and cross their fingers on the other grant, or accept the micro grant. Depending on what's going on that year, you could kind of know how big the pool of people is. And it just seems counterintuitive with something like this to have to turn down an opportunity. It feels like gambling to me. And I don't love that.
So sorry, I think you might have misunderstood. It's only the annual grants that you can apply to one. Micro grant is not part of that. So you can apply for a micro grant at any time. It's just the annual grant. So community projects, fellows, and operating. With those annual grant categories, you can only apply for one. So the micro grant is not part of that. But thank you for that question. I'm glad that we were able to clarify that. And then I see Myra.
Hi, I'm Maria. Thank you so
Sorry,
much.
Maria.
It's been very helpful and informative. I was wondering, I'm a freelance theater director, and a lot of my work is national, although I have directed in Long Beach, I guess as late as 2021. So I'm wondering about the Long Beach, I live in Long Beach, and I'm wondering about the Long Beach element, you know, just because in my field, most people need to show their work nationally in order to build their career, and there aren't that many local, but and there are some local venues, obviously, but
Correct.
also, what would be considered local? Does it have to be city of Long Beach? I've done a lot of work, you know, in LA, in Orange County, but that's kind of the nature of performing arts is a little bit different than maybe some other art forms.
I think that issue is across the board. There's not very many, you know, galleries in Long Beach. You know, a lot of that scene is outside of Long Beach. So that's not a problem. And obviously we want to uplift folks that are showing regionally, internationally, all of that. But what we're asking for is that you're also doing things in Long Beach. So I think that's great that you're getting recognition, performing outside of Long Beach. But what are you doing here in Long Beach? Are you teaching workshops? It doesn't necessarily have to be, like, how are you bringing your artistic practice that you're also doing regionally here to Long Beach is what we're asking for.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yes.
So you said 3 years. So if, you know, also theater was heavily impacted by COVID. So if, you know, like I, for example, directed for International City Theater several times, but the most recently was 2021. Is that within the 3-year? I mean, it was a Zoom show because
yeah, I think the last couple of years with this grant, we have been a little bit more flexible with that 3 years because of COVID and the impacts. And so I think, you know, addressing that and okay, in your resume or somewhere in the application, I think is important. And so that's taken in consideration. But yes, absolutely. We understand that COVID impacted everybody's ability to perform. So we've been a little bit more flexible on that 3 years, the last few years with COVID, because obviously that's impacted everybody.
Thank you so much.
Let's see. I saw some other hands. I don't see any more. Am I missing any hands up? Sorry. Oh, I see. Oh, yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi.
Yes.
Yes. My question, I think, you know, our project is a series of concerts. There's 5 concerts per year, 1 in Long Beach and 1 venue in San Pedro. And my question, and I think it's more kind of a community project grant that I'm going to apply for. But because the deadline for the micro grant is on May 15th for the September date, I was trying to get some information. So my question was about the budgets, because the expenses spread on 2 communities, San Pedro and Long Beach. And obviously, the whole idea of having a series is to amortize better some of the costs. So how do you manage that, asking for a micro grant from one specific concert when we intend to also ask for a grant for the series after, before June?
So I think clarifying the dates of the project period would be really helpful here. So for the micro grant, that 15th date is for projects that are happening by September 30th of 2024. So your community project grant, our fiscal year is October 1st through September 30th. So this grant cycle that we're applying for right now is for October 1st, 2024 to September 30th, 2025. So that's the time period that these grants are for. So it sounds like you're talking about two different time periods potentially. And then if you're looking to apply for the community project grant, again, we're going to be doing a workshop next Wednesday on that grant opportunity, so we can dive a little bit more into that. I would focus your budget specifically on the Long Beach performance, or that portion of it for the application.
Thank you.
I see Corey has a question.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. I have two questions. The first one is, since I'm currently a Creative Core Fellowship recipient, I'm wondering, is the panel going to look at that as being, he did this big project, he got this fellowship, that's great, or he just got this fellowship, why would we give him another one? So I'm not sure how much I should talk about my current project in this application, or if I should downplay it a little bit.
I can't speak for how the panel is going to make that decision. I think it really depends on the panelists. And yeah, that is a little bit tricky. You're not ineligible because it's a different grant cycle and Creative Core was separate funding. I can say that in the last panel, there were some Creative Core folks that may have applied, but it was not a factor in whether or not they got the grant.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I applied for this about 10 years ago and I didn't get it. And one of the feedback notes was that I didn't indicate how I was going to spend the money if I got it. But it was my understanding that we don't have to tell how we're going to spend the money for this one.
Yeah, so in previous years, there was a project that was required. And so now that's no longer. So that's probably why you got that feedback a while back. We took out that part of there being a project as part of the application. So
Gotcha.
That's an older application.
So no longer relevant. Okay, great. Thank you.
And then Alexis, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
What was my question? I put it in the notes. What is something that should be included in the letters of recommendation? This is my first time having to, as an artist, ask for that.
Yeah, so if you're requesting a letter of recommendation from, I know you've done a lot of murals, so maybe somebody that you worked with for one of those, or that you've worked with in the past, talking about you as an artist, talking about your work, it's almost, they're like vouching for you in a way and saying, I recommend this artist for this fellowship is what we're looking for. So talking about your practice, what you've done in the community, all of those kind of things would be great for a letter of recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
I see you have your hand up again. Maria, if you would like to. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, just to follow up on that question, is it more important to have a recommender who is, local to Long Beach, perhaps a previous fellow, but might be, working in a related but different discipline? Or is it more important to have someone who is in your field?
I think both of those are great options. I don't think one's preferred over the other. It just depends on the quality of the letter of recommendation, I would say. And again, I can't necessarily speak to how the panel is going to make that decision. Some may view one way, some may view it another way. But in the past, that has not come up as, you know, we've received all different types of letters. And so the things that I've seen come up about the letters of recommendation have been, it's not on professional letterhead. It doesn't feel like it's a professional letter, or it doesn't relate to what the artist is proposing. Those type of things are what's come up, not necessarily who's, if it's a professional in the field or not. And then Jude posted for us, so for the visual artist, up to 10 images, and for video or audio, up to 5 minutes. And Star, I see you raised your hand.
So I'm not sure how familiar you are with, as an example, the visual arts, as an example, the difference between when you have to create an environment. We're in what's called the bubble in Long Beach. So I'm based in Long Beach. Sometimes I get assignments in Long Beach, but I might go all over Southern California. And a lot of times if I'm doing a personal project, even though I'm doing all of my pre-production in Long Beach, I might show it in Long Beach. I am probably going to have all the fittings in Long Beach, all of that. I'm probably going to shoot most of it further south for the very reason that if a police officer sees me, they will ticket me for not having a permit. Whereas if I'm shooting in Crystal Cove, which you would think would have more people noticing because it's a federal beach, I am less likely to have problems with the lifeguards than I am if I'm shooting here in Long Beach at Rosie's Dog Beach, because the city of Long Beach can get people to pay to do that. And the reason for that is what the 30-mile bubble means is that within that 30-mile bubble, they do not need to pay for any of the crew members to stay overnight if they do a location shoot in Long Beach. But if they do a location shoot in Crystal Cove, it is far enough away from the studio that they have to pay for overnight accommodations if they are requested. So anytime you go outside the 30-mile bubble, you have a easier time with not having problems with people asking you, are you a professional? You know, and I believe even with insurance, they've raised the rate now for a 3-day permit for a still photo shoot of 5 people or less to about $300, which is just a little bit unaffordable in some ways. And I was just wondering, you know, it's hard enough with a 15-year career to try to figure out 10 images to try to say this is me. But in my artist statement, should I just address that? Should I address the fact that, yes, I'm a Long Beach artist, but the work you're seeing will encompass Southern California. I am known throughout Southern California. I worked for LA Weekly, did 80 covers for them before they got sold. And so I wouldn't want to hide the breadth of my work in order to show just such a narrow piece to fit a criteria. I would rather someone know my work than just see a piece of it and not really understand it.
Yeah, so I want to be clear. We're not asking for only samples in Long Beach, and I don't think that you showing samples of things that are filmed outside of Long Beach is prohibitive at all. What we're looking for is for you to demonstrate that you have somehow impacted or done things in the Long Beach community. So it sounds like, is it film-based that your work is, or I want to make sure I'm understanding.
I'm photo-based. And by the way, any
Okay.
filmmakers out there who did not know this, in 2020, there was a Supreme Court decision. Any federal land cannot charge you to do a video shoot. It does not cover stills, it only covers video, and that's because federal land is considered to be public land. So they no longer can ask for filming permits on federal land, but on state land they can. Just, I always like to point that out because nobody seems to know that.
That's helpful. Thank you. So, have you exhibited your photography in Long Beach? Have you done something? So even though the
well, and that's what 3 years is. I did a 30,000 image photo project over the course of 4 months in COVID. And one of the things I did that apparently it looks like no but other artists did I got beautiful documentary photographs of every single one of the murals that was put up after the riots in the short period of time that they were up. And I got people creating them, but I got the entirety of that work. And because that work was done by so many different artists, I believe was supposed to go into someone's collection, into a yard to be shown later, but I don't know if it ever was actually shown, those murals. So I can, I can show, but again, it's 10 images. So I can show one image from that. I can't show the, I shot for 35 days. Of those 35 days, 30 of them were in California. I went to each location in California twice that should have people that had none. So it was an empty California, and I thought I was done. Then we had the riots. So I came back out and I shot after the riots because I wanted to show it.
So
again, how do I do one
also,
image to show that?
We also ask for your website as part of it as well. So you're not just limited to those 10 images. The panel will be able to look at your website as well. So, you can point to that as a body of work. And it sounds like, you did do stuff in Long Beach. And again, I'm going to reiterate, because of COVID, we are a little bit more lenient on that 3 years for exhibiting, because we know that there was a lot of things that happened that prohibited that.
I need to find the mute.
I don't see any other hands up. Any other questions?
There is a question in the chat asking if animation is a field that the grant is open to.
Absolutely, yes. We have funded in the past, so yes, absolutely. Well, it doesn't sound like there's any. Oh, I see one more. See the gloved artist raise
Hi.
hand.
Yes.
So,
So the 3 years, maybe I didn't hear correctly, but if you've done body of work outside of Long Beach, is that counted for still, those 3 years of working as an artist? It doesn't necessarily have to be in Long Beach, but as long as you are active in Long Beach as an artist and do workshops and such, right? Okay.
correct.
If you're
Yes.
multidisciplinary artist, like photography, fashion, also like a business owner, like I resell vintage, but I upcycle it. I was thinking if that's under the costume design category, because I do styling as well. So like I do a lot of different art expressions. So I'm just trying to figure out how to like streamline that and communicate that to be able to like apply for this.
Yeah, I think that's tough because, as I mentioned in the criteria for evaluation, it's tough when you get multidisciplinary artists because it can be very disjointed, and the application can be like, well, there's this, there's this, there's this. My recommendation is usually an artist has like a vision or a line of inquiry that they're interested in and pursuing, and I don't want to call it a brand, but that's the reality of it, is that artists have that. And so you can be a multidisciplinary artist, but everything has to connect and speak to what that vision is. So if you're all over the place and your artist statement doesn't have a vision that's connecting it, that's gonna be difficult for the panel to understand, like, where is this artist at? What are they doing? So I would either recommend focusing on one art form for the application, or if you do have a unifying vision, to highlight that in the artist statement so that it's clear to the panel why you're using all these different genres and the importance of each genre to speak to the vision. So for example, like, I'm using photography specifically for this so that I can communicate this. And it's important because, so why are you using all these different types of art, and how does that speak to the overall vision of your practice?
Okay, yes, I do have a vision and how I use these mediums, so that's very helpful. For me, it's more of like protecting the planet and also being more humanitarian, and a lot of my work speaks that. but using different mediums. So that makes sense what you just said. So that could be
Yeah, so if you're
screening.
clear, in your artist statement, and maybe that's where you could get some help from one of the one-on-ones to really get some feedback and clarification on how this all connects and how the statement unifies all of these different art forms.
Okay, you said the 101. Is that something that we could make an appointment for?
We're
Right.
going to be, yeah, so we're going to be sending out that through our newsletter. We can also send it out to everybody that joined this meeting. So our newsletter, social media, we're going to be opening up those appointments for photography and one-on-one.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. for
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Thank
That cleared
you.
it up. Thank you.
And any more questions? I don't see any more questions, but we are again. Oh, do you have another question, or is your hand still up from before? The gloved artist, do you have another question? I think your hand might still be up. So thank you everybody for attending. We have a quick survey. If you have a few seconds to just share in the poll, we want to get some feedback on how this workshop was for everybody. And then we're here and available. So if questions come up afterwards and you want to email the grants email, feel free to do that and we'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. But thank you so much. Great to see you folks and looking forward to seeing your applications come through.
Thank you, Arts Council.
Thank you.